Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Soss. This is their part number 216 in a US19 finish. It's a concealed or an invisible hinge, and that's what it looks like. So it's a 216 hinge that is in a table or a range or a matrix of available Soss hinges in their standard product offering. The hinges that people probably most widely know Soss for are going to look like this. A little bit bigger, many that are smaller, derivatives and variations of this for different applications. A 216 hinge is used commonly for 1 3/8 or 1 3/4 thick doors, depending on the weight. Depending on the weight and then the width of the door. You may use 2 or 3 or more, or you might need to go up to a larger hinge, or possibly this is too large a hinge and you go to a smaller hinge. So that's where you will use this. The US19 is black. Black has been popular for a couple years. The year's 2020 right now, and black has been popular and will likely be so for at least a decade. Like all finishes really go through phases of popularity. You know, today it's black. You know, it used to be your Venetian bronze and oil rub bronze. Before that it was satin nickel, then satin chrome, then polished brass, then antique brass, etched bronze back into the 70s. So we've gone from 2020 all the way to 1970. Satin bronze would be in the 60s, no doubt. That was very popular. Historically, if you look at catalogs, they're 100 years old, 120 years old. Black is available by everybody. So historically, it's a pretty standard color, but it's only become popularized again somewhat recently. And you do have manufacturers making black material. Okay, and this would be an example of that. So this is your 216 Soss hinge. This is listed as 20-minute fire rated. It has the indication here, as well as a label that the manufacturer is authorized and approved to apply to this hinge because it has been tested in compliance with the requirements for the fire test for either 90 or 180 minute, hour and a half, or 3-hour application. So the Soss hinge is a invisible hinge that is capable of handling heavier than average door weights or things that you're doing to a door, like an 1 3/4 thick door that you're laminating something quite heavy to it. It's also concealed, and that's another reason why it's extremely desirable, because you don't see the hardware at all. And there are little total downsides to the hinge. There's one noticeable downside, which we'll talk about in a moment. But in most standard applications, there are no downsides to this at all. Some people might think to them or say to themselves, yeah, no, there's a downside to Soss hinges. And I think what that is the perceived level of technicality or complexity to the hinge, which is, in my opinion, completely false. And when we switch to the screen view, I'll show you how easy it is to install these. And people look at these and say, I have no idea how... It only bounced twice. I have no idea how I would install this hinge. I have no idea how this would be installed. Well, it's really actually quite simple. There's just 2 preparations to do for this hinge, and there's one cardinal rule. So there's a cardinal rule, and then there's a 2-step process. It's very simple, quite frankly. This is going to include 4 each of the machine screws. This can go down to a metal door and metal frame. 4 each of the wood screws for a wood door, wood frame. So you can do it wood by wood, metal by metal, metal by wood, wood by metal, however you're going to install that. That's all included. Now, where you're going to use this is probably where you or your client want a concealed sort of aspect. The concealed hinge does require that you take other things into consideration, and that would be primarily if you are using a door closer or an overhead stop holder. You need to have special templating from the factory providing that material so that you know where to place that material because of a fundamental aspect of the Soss hinge. That rivet there is going to represent our vertical axis of pivoting. And you can see that it actually moves, it floats as the door goes from closed to 90 degree to 180 degree. That has to be taken into account when you're installing this other hardware. That rivet is the vertical axis of pivoting. With a butt or a pivot, that vertical axis of pivoting doesn't float through the opening in a weird ellipse sort of shape. That needs to be taken into account. It's not a deal breaker, but when you order closers, overhead stops, things that have their own vertical axis of pivoting, an overhead stop does. It's got 2 points. A closer does. You have things that rotate based on the geometry of the door. That has to be taken into account. Be mindful to specify your closers and overhead stops and holders that way. That you need a template for the Soss 216 hinge, and that will be provided to you. There are times when it's an additional charge, so be mindful of that. But a concealed look or a heavier application or a combination of a very heavy door and a requirement for a concealed application. We did a job with a 307/0 16 gauge hollow metal door, and they laminated 3/4 inch granite onto it. This hinge worked, not the 216, we probably used 218s and probably 5 of them, I forget. Worked perfectly. That laminated 3/4 inch granite, it was okay because we were mounting it on the push side. And this hinge, of course, needs to be biased towards the pull side of the opening. And that strikes to the heart of the one major cardinal rule that you can't violate. You can't have a hinge back set greater than a certain dimension, and we'll show you that. So we've talked about what it is, where you'll use it. Let's switch to the screen view now and look at the supporting documentation. Here is the hinge that we are indeed looking at. Extended description information down below. Before we get to that, let's look at some photographs that we have. There's the hinge and all of the screws, the laminated steel plates. The body, I believe, is zinc because, well, it's non-ferrous, and I believe, and it's stated in the catalog as well, obviously. So zinc body, laminated steel plates. Okay. Another set of images here to look at. That was before I dropped it. That's our vertical axis of pivoting right there. And that will float from basically here out to here to here. So it goes through half of an ellipse. And then your fastener package, and then that label. The 97S9 customers will call and say, yeah, I've got an R13634 hinge. Okay, no, that's the file record locator at the testing laboratory. If someone here knows what that R number is and say, oh yeah, that's a Soss hinge, then we at least know who the manufacturer is and what type of hardware it is. But this would be a Soss 216. Now, extended description information. The 216 is used for wood and metal applications, 1 3/8 to 1 3/4. The 216, there you go, made of zinc and steel material. Full-size door-style hinge will provide superior performance and durability. What they're saying is, Soss makes a lot of hinges for cabinets. They make barrel hinges for very thin material. This is a full-size version of those smaller hinges. Will provide superior appearance and durability, found in many applications where a flush fit, compact size, and smooth operation are necessary features. Soss hinges go to 180 degrees and are a single acting hinge. They don't go in. They don't act as a double acting door or swing into the egress and then the egress side of the opening. 216 Invisible Hinge, black E-coated. It's a black hinge. They call it US19, which is black. Flat black, really. Small amount of sheen to this, but everything has a small amount of reflectivity to it, I suppose. But this is I wouldn't say it's not dead black, but it's only slightly reflective. Minimum material thickness is going to be 1 3/8. Your screw details here, they're giving you information in terms of what to pre-drill the holes. There's got to be a mistake here. A 32 and a 10. That has to be a mistake. Let's look. Let's take a closer look at what those sizes are. So these numbered sizes, it's a numbered drill index, and I have a chart here. A number 10 drill bit is 0.1935. So just heavy on 3/16, 0.19. The root diameter of the screw is 0.182. Okay, so 0.182 is the root diameter. And are they saying that to be for hardwood? Yeah, it makes... Okay. Okay, all right. So they want you to drill a hole slightly larger than the root diameter, but then a 32 for softwoods. Over to my chart again, a 32 is 0.116. And that's less than 1/8 of an inch in a softwood. Well, you know, I guess it's not an error. That root diameter is 0.182, and they want you drilling a hole that's 75 thousandths smaller, which is basically a 1/16 of an inch. In a softwood, okay, I stand very, you know, corrected, is the bottom line. That's what the factory says. And we'll show you the catalog cut sheet where we can look at that as well. Machine screws are 1/4 20. The wood screws are number 14. Now, lots of documents here which we'll go over. The Cardinal Rule I have mentioned, that would be known as dimension E. Dimension E is 1/4 inch, and it's shown here. Dimension E is the back set from the edge of the door to where the prep starts, or the face of the frame as well, assuming that it's a 0 inset. The door and frame are flush with each other. So the Cardinal Rule basically states don't exceed dimension E, which is 1/4 inch. Let's look at the template here for an understanding of that. So let's just jump to it. 1/4 inch is that area. If exceeded, door may not open. And we're going to illustrate, well, let's do it right now. The clearance detail. This document, if you were to call Soss and ask for, you know, tell me what that door looks like at 90 degrees, or I want to apply a panel to it, they're going to send you this document. So in our application, we can just consider this column here, what we're doing, and this just to be the door. That's 1/4 inch. And that's what it's going to look like at 90 degree, and then at 180 degree. And that dimension right there becomes about a 64th of an inch, and that's why dimension E cannot be exceeded. If you move the hinge this way and this way, this is going to come in conflict with each other. So if you were doing a different application where you were literally applying material to it, you can do that, provided that you understand the ultimate degree of opening will be modified or compromised. So over here, if you're going to apply some material that you're going to put a 45-degree angle on, because you're putting it on both the door and the frame, you can do that, provided that the material that you're adding does not exceed half of the maximum clearance when the door is in the 180-degree position. So the clearance is from here to here. Going back to the template, it will show us 15/64 door clearance. So if you're going to apply material, the thickness must be less than half of that, so 7/64. So it cannot even be 1/8 of an inch. And you have to chamfer it or bevel it at 45 degree. And at that point, you'll have 0 clearance here. You can put it on one side or the other. You're only going to go to 90 degree at that point. At that point, you can have any thickness you want. You're just going to be limited to 90 degree. It would be very much my suggestion in applications where you can't go past 90 is that you have overhead stops made for the project, and you template them to dead stop at 90 degree, which is a reference to the templating of the overhead stop itself. You can position those to dead stop at 90 degree. It'll hit the spring at probably about 85, 87 degree, but if you continue to push, it will compress that spring to where it dead stops at 90. You'd certainly want that here. Otherwise, the door can be pushed open and you're going to damage the frame and likely the trim, both, in fact. This talks about that clearance, what I had mentioned earlier. Here you can read that. I'll leave that up to you to discover. So pretty fascinating information regarding how you'll go about installing that material in these applications where you have applied material. Now, as I had said earlier, if you're mounting it on the push side, here, it doesn't matter. Put as much on there as you like. You might have to treat it on the opposite side of the door, but only on the pull side will you have a problem. Well, only on the pull side where you must be mindful of what you're installing. Now back to the template. I had said earlier, these are really easy hinges, and it is because you only need to make 2 preparations to get this properly installed. That's going to be what I will call the body prep, and then the plate prep, which is here. The body down here, and then this exposed plate prep. This is the plate. This imaginary line would be the body prep. You only need to do 2 preparations to make this work. You're first going to locate the vertical center line, or the top of the door to the center of each hinge, the underside of the header to the center of each hinge if you're doing frames as well, which someone's doing frames. And if you have a top of the door to the center of the first hinge at 7.5 inch, that same dimension when put onto the frame will be 7 5/8 because you'll have an 1/8 of an inch gap, as industry standard best practice would call out, between the top of the door and the underside of the header. So you need to get the vertical center lines accurate. You need to observe the 1/4 inch to not exceed. So now you know where to put it here. You know where to put it here in relationship to the outside of the frame or the outside of the door. Then you're going to do your body prep at that position, which is going to be 1 inch wide, 2 and 19/32 overall length. That's the body itself. I'd probably make it 2 and 11/16, just slightly heavy on that. And then your depth. And the depth is over here, 1.5 inch deep mortise. So now you know those 3 dimensions. The only thing you have to do now is the finished plate, which is just what you see here. That's going to be 4 and 5/8. From the center line, it's overall 4 and 5/8, 1 inch wide, 15/32 thickness. Bingo. We've just prepped the door and frame for Soss hinges. It's that easy. It really is. The Cardinal Rule: don't exceed 1/4 inch. If you do, your door's not going to open. It'll open, but something will be damaged. Door clearance reduces to 1/64 while closing. That's that simple. It is literally that simple. Now, let's look at the rest of these PDFs. Let's start with Hinge Location. This is a document showing the published guidelines as to where the factory would like to see hinges. If you're going with 3, bias 2 towards the top of the door. The majority of the weight of the door, 70% in fact, is held by that top hinge. So they want the hardware to be closer to the top of the door. I would suggest that you confirm with your door manufacturer that that is acceptable in terms of where to locate them. You don't want to have a problem with the factory denying a warranty claim for warp, should the door develop warp or be warped, as improperly hung, because you'll normally see top, middle, and bottom. Soss would like you to spread those out to hold that door in the relationship of the frame as to where it ought to be by biasing, that middle hinge, so to speak, halfway up half of the A dimension, meaning the center line to the top hinge divided by 2, just space it evenly. Then the hinge sizing chart. This is what they call a nomograph. This is a document that will allow you to determine, based on the door width, the door weight, the door thickness, which hinge, and how many you'll use. So for a 36-inch wide door that weighs 150 pounds, you go to here, you'll just keep going up, you go straight across. That's going to allow you to use a 216, a 218, or a 220, depending on the door thickness. If it's 1 3/4 inch, you're going to use a 218 hinge, and you'll use 4 of them, according to this. Normally 3 hinges would work on that as well. But the chart definitely says, on my moving my mouse along these lines, it does appear to be 4 is the number. So there you go. That's how you use that. And this is called a nomograph. We have a link to this on our manufacturer's page. 90-degree open, that just shows what that vertical axis of pivoting does in terms of that critical point where you can have conflict based on the X dimension, which is the E dimension, the Cardinal Rule dimension. So that will show you where that point is. Based on this X dimension. Allows you to better understand where you might position that. Cased jam T-tail. This is just a drawing that if someone says, send me something, I'm going to put this into a cased opening frame. Well, gives you an idea of what that looks like. Depending on what you're applying out here, you're probably only going to go to 90 degree. And again, the most crucial of E dimension, which is down here. If the catalog dimension E is exceeded, the door may not open. See the appropriate catalog template, really, for that dimension. It's so important, that E dimension, that they literally list it in multiple places. Clearance detail, we discussed that at length. Template and hinge location, we've gone over. This hinge is sold per each. When you buy one, we're going to ship you one. This hinge happens to also be packaged one in a box. That's not the case for all Soss hinges. Sometimes there's more than one in a box. But there you go. A Soss factory original video is here. Link here below this video to the manufacturer's page. That will allow you to review not only all of the Soss products that we sell by means of this horizontal navigation here, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. Other encyclopedic documents are here. The nomograph, the clearance detail, the cased opening, those other documents that we just ran through are linked here separately. Let's open up the product catalog and we'll take a look at that. Now, this catalog is quite fascinating, and I will leave it up to you to discover most of it. Really what I want to do is scroll down to where we can get to the hinges, the 218 style hinges, the Soss Invisible Hinge portion. An engineering marvel? Yeah, I agree. I think there are so many hyper brilliant people that have invented hardware in this industry over the last 150, 350 years. They have a 216 as a closer, an invisible closer. You can modify that to close the door. We've sold those. It's a spring. The Hercules style, the only thing I'll say about that is it's the same concept. It's just that the nomograph for the Hercules hinge exceeds 1,000 pounds. So they get into excessively heavier doors. The nomograph for the standard hinge tops out at 500 pounds. Okay, so a really, really capable hinge on Soss hinges. It had been said, I don't care how heavy the door is, keep throwing Soss hinges at it, and the nomograph does bolster that bold statement. The heavier you go, the more hinges you add. Okay, so don't, if you have heavy material, that's where Soss really shines. Butt hinges can handle these weights as well, but they're not concealed, nor are they as elegant in terms of their engineering. A chart showing our typical hinges. The next page of that will show us our 216, and that is indeed where the 32 and 10 drill sizes are indicated. If you're prepping this material, I would encourage you to have a drill index size of drill bits, because you get such finer increments between sizes. Okay. Between a 35 and a 34 is a thousandth of an inch. You know, so you can get really 20 thousandths of an inch. Very accurate. Let's see. The fire-rated hinges are here. You'll want to be mindful that if you're doing a fire door, to be sure you're ordering the proper fire-rated hinge. They can do 1.5 and 3 hour doors, and they're 416 or 418 series hinges. They're 220 as well. Here are those fire-rated versions. Power transfer hinge. Why would you need to transfer power through the hinge? Well, sure, an electric lock, a lock that will have a exit device that will have electric latch retraction, provided you have the right exit device and the electrical characteristics of the device and the hinge are compatible. You might have a request to exit or a REX switch. You very likely might have a very recent client of mine needed power transfer hinges because the glass in the doors, 2 clients actually within about a 1-month period, needed to have power come through because this was the type of glass that required power to turn it from opaque to transparent and back and forth. That might be where you use it as well. Not load rated, so be mindful when you're calculating your overall weight. You can't count this hinge among that. At least I don't believe, every other electric transfer hinge is not load rated. I can't say how this one really is. Smaller versions for metal applications I had mentioned earlier, custom applications, etc. Encyclopedic documents, they're barrel hinges used in furniture applications. Quadrant hinge if you have some sort of a lid that lifts up. Magnetic stops, the template kit that they have for these hinges. I have a video on these templates that, it's this wooden template that you can purchase. You can purchase them individually. This would be a 216 IT, or you can buy the entire kit. The entire kit is nice because you assemble it, you nail it to the door, and then remove the nails from the door, take the whole gizmo to the frame, nail it again, and your center lines are preserved. So that's why you might want that. Accessories such as the router bit, the guide are here. So you can purchase the hinges and everything you need to install it with the exception of the router and the drill. Reinforcements for steel doors and frames. I did a very heavy door. Not only that granite faced door, but I did a heavier door where it was a 14 gauge hollow metal door that may have been about 4 foot wide and 8 foot tall. 14 gauge, which was 1 7/8 inches thick because of the sheer thickness of the steel. They then laminated onto both sides of the door 12 gauge stainless steel. And I think I used 4 or 5 Soss 220s, I don't recall. But that manufacturer, when they made that door for me, they may have used these steel reinforcements. They may have bought them, or they've likely just made their own. But you can put them in metal doors, you betcha. More encyclopedic information. So the world, and there's that nomograph, the original nomograph. The world of Soss is pretty fascinating because of the engineering marvel that it truly is. Let's wrap up this video on camera. Okay, in conclusion, a highly capable hinge. That's the case that I've hoped to make. A hinge also that is very easy to install, another case that I've hoped to make. You've got that Cardinal Rule that exists really with all such hinges, whether it be a fixed hinge like a Soss Invisible Hinge, or the Tectis, Sugatsuni, McKinney, whoever else makes a similar hinge that's multi-axis adjustable. You have to position those in the right location. People like those adjustable style hinges, and I think it's only because a matter of compensation of the lack of perceived skill at prepping this in the right location. Soss has stated they'll never make an adjustable 3-way adjustable style hinge, and I don't see any reason why they should, from the perspective that, the proper vertical height, the proper back set, and mortise it per the template, and you will never have a problem. the only argument for them to do it is because there's market share that they're losing because the market wants those hinges. And I've talked to people. People have called me up and ordered Tectus or Sugatsuni hinges, or the McKinney hinge. Why are you? I would say, out of professional curiosity, why do you order that? Because of why are you ordering that adjustable hinge? Why not just order the Soss hinge? It's substantially less expensive. I want to be able to adjust it if I'm off a little. Okay, hey, listen. If I was going to be doing something for the first time and I was not, if I didn't make a living with a router in my hand, which I don't, but I have in my career for years, I can understand that. So Soss might consider it, saying, well, making an adjustable hinge for Soss might be an acknowledgement that their product could be better, I suppose. But the market does want them. And they haven't existed for years and years. They've existed for a couple of decades, but the market clearly wants them. And I've asked a client of mine who installed them 10 years ago at this point and said, hey, did you ever have any callbacks, any problems with the screws that hold all that together moving on you? And they said, nope, I haven't heard any of that. So I've asked that of other people as well, and I've never heard someone say, no one's ever told me that those adjustable hinges, yeah, those are a maintenance problem. I've not heard that. They've also not been installed for 30 years. So we'll see, I suppose, what happens. But there's no reason to shy away from this. And the biggest argument to just mortise it correctly is these hinges can be about a third the cost of what a adjustable style hinge is. And I really like how they look as well. A really neat look. Any questions on the Soss 216 in this US19? Oh, by the way, it's available in lots of finishes. I'll just read them off. Soss 216, unplated, an unplated finish, which, must be because you want to do some sort of special finish over it. An oil rub bronze equivalent, a polished nickel, a satin nickel, black, polished chrome, satin chrome, polished brass, satin brass, antique brass, white, 24 karat gold plated. And I think that's all of it. So lots of finishes. Pretty much any finish you want to do, they're going to have available. Any questions on the 216 or any other Soss product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you. Again, thank you for watching. And if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up. Please subscribe and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.